no sul da ilha de Manhattan. A informação é de que um jato comercial, não se sabe ainda se de passageiros ou de carga, se chocou com as torres.
We also have Don Daler on the phone, and you know he's been with us on Good Morning America for a long time. And Don, where are you and what do you know?
I'm about 4 or 5 blocks just north of the World Trade Center. And at about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, there was a loud sound that I can only describe as it sounded like a missile, not an airplane. Then there was a loud explosion and immediately lots of screaming out on the streets. And I don't want to cause any speculation, but that's the only way I could describe the sound. And it was definitely not the sound of a prop plane or anything like that.
And am I right? Are you a pilot?
Well, I have flown. I do not have a pilot's license. But I grew up on military bases, and I know the sound of jets, and I've been in war zones and heard those kinds of different sounds. So, again, not to cause any kind of undue speculation, but the sound itself was not of a prop plane. It was perhaps a jet, but it could have been a missile as well.
Can you give me, was it a whining sound, Don, or what?
Yes, it was a how to describe it? It was a high-pitched, but it had a whooshing sound, not like a prop plane.
Huh. And you didn't see anything actually in the air?
No, I wasn't looking out, but we looked out immediately. You can see quite a lot of damage. If it was an airplane, it had to be huge because it hit way up in the World Trade Center. I would say it's probably a good 5-6 of the way up to the top. There's a considerable amount of flame. There's damage on 2 sides that I can see. On the very north-facing side, there's where looks like is the largest amount of damage. There's a gigantic hole that encompasses a number of floors. I would say maybe 10 to 15 floors. And then on the left side, which would be the east side, there's considerable damage as well, and lots of flames and smoke coming out of it.
You know, I don't know that people outside New York realize it, but these 2 buildings are essentially cities in and of themselves. I mean, there's 30 to 40,000 people, if I remember the number, and I'm doing this from memory.
Yes.
Number of people who actually work in these buildings, and this obviously occurred at the time that people were coming to work.
Don, are you saying that this sound was striking enough that you heard it before you saw it?
I noticed it before the explosion. I noticed a sound like something was very low and shrieking across the sky. And then I heard the explosion.
And which of the 2 towers is this? Because, again, we're just seeing an angle that's a little deceptive.
This is the West Tower.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're hearing somewhat faintly in the background, Don, as you talk to us, sirens. Are there a lot of emergency vehicles already on the scene?
Yeah, they're descending. This part of New York City has quite a few emergency stations all over, and I imagine it sounds like they're coming from every one of the stations. In fact, there's one just down the street that sounds like every truck they have is headed that way.
We see, actually, we see 2 faces. I know you can't see the picture that our audience is seeing, but we see 2 faces of that tower. One seems to have a rather gaping large hole in it. The other face seems to have 2 holes in it. It's all somewhat obscured by smoke, one large, one somewhat smaller.
Right.
And, of course, we know there are a variety of offices there. There are financial offices there. There are advertising offices.
Nós voltamos agora com imagens ao vivo de Nova York, do prédio do World Trade Center, no sul da ilha de Manhattan, no centro de Nova York. Você está vendo aí exatamente o local onde houve o choque de um avião comercial, provavelmente um Boeing 737, contra as Torres Gêmeas.
On those 2 faces of the World Trade Center, there's multiple, it looks like, holes
with fire
or openings
still going on.
On both sides of the tower.
As we've heard before, we said earlier that there was at least one speculative report that an airplane had crashed in, whether deliberately or accidentally, we don't know. And there are continuing reports from people who say that they saw an airplane, one woman saying that she saw a jet going in. So, again, Don, a jet screaming that low could be consistent with what you heard?
Absolutely. It could be consistent with what I heard. What I know I did not hear was an airplane, any kind of a prop plane. And I think looking at the damage, I don't think there's any way possible that it would have been a prop plane. It's just too much damage to the building. What's deceptive about the World Trade Center is that it is so huge and so tall that the perspective is difficult to get from the ground. But when you look at the size of the hole, and if you look in context at one of the helicopters going around at a lower size, a helicopter is about the size of a regular Cessna, that kind of thing, the body of the plane. The hole is so much larger than that helicopter that it would have to, if it was a jet, I would have to speculate that it would have to be a larger than normal jet. I mean, larger than like a Citation or something like that. It's just such a gigantic hole, and it blew out the other side. And again, these buildings are almost a city block size building. So for it to have blown in this hole on the north side as well as the west side, it had to be a gigantic explosion.
Well, obviously, we don't know if this was, if it was a plane, and I underline if it was. We don't know if it would have been deliberate or accidental. We know so little now other than what we can see from these pictures. But the interesting point is there are a number of small airports around New York where passenger corporate jets or private jets will land and take off. And it's not uncommon, if you have ever visited the World Trade Center, when you go up to the observation platforms at the top, you can look down on airplanes that are either coming in for landings or taking off from New York airports. But all pilots who fly in this area know very well where the World Trade Center is located. All the routes are very far or comfortably far away from the two towers.
And not just private planes, too, because with some winds in some directions, even out of the big commercial airports, planes are routed quite close to New York. I've flown in from LaGuardia, even into LaGuardia, but having to go right by the World Trade Centers.
But we emphasize this is all speculative at this point. And just to reset for all of you, this is a special report from ABC News, and we are dealing, and we have to underline this, we are dealing purely in the realm of speculation here as to what may have happened at the World Trade Center. Obviously, a major incident occurred here on the upper floors of one of the World Trade Center towers. You can see multiple openings and flames coming out of at least two sides of the tower at the World Trade Center. And
we just got a report that the Associated Press is now reporting that it was an aircraft. So that's one more witness weighing in, or at least one more source weighing in on the fact that it was an aircraft of some kind.
And as Don Daly reported, this occurred about 15 or 20 minutes ago in downtown New York. And New York time, that would have been about 20 minutes or 8:45. This is a time when literally tens of thousands of people are coming to work at the World Trade Center.
Looking at the top of the building, you mentioned there's an observation center, and I don't know what time it opens, but I think it opens fairly early, and people are up there at all hours of the day. Families, tourists coming in to look at the city of New York from atop it. Also there, I don't know if this is the building that has the restaurant on top of it as well, but in those high floors, there are places where tourists teem in the morning, even if the regular workers weren't in. And we remind you again that there was a terrorist bomb that did go off at the World Trade Center years ago. It was